Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Max with BuzzTox here, and I'm back with a breakdown for Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 6. This episode is called Beyond the Wall. And actually, I recorded a breakdown video with Trevor a couple of days after I watched the episode. And I was still very annoyed and pissed off in the direction that they went, and as I was editing it, I was kind of frustrated. Because instead of breaking down the episode and giving you a cohesive and in-depth analysis, I was just bitching about everything that they did wrong. So I wanted to make this breakdown video and really flesh out possibilities of what could happen with the show rather than just bashing it myself. But I want you guys to know that the breakdown video I did is not going to go to waste. I treated it like a podcast. I just overlaid repeating footage, and if you guys want to listen to it on your own time, it will be up a couple days after this video. But let's get into the breakdown, and first thing I want to talk about is Jorah and Jon. Jon wanted to give Longclaw back to Jorah because that is his family's ancestral sword. And Jorah leaves it with Jon because it is his. Jorah forfeit the right to claim that sword. But the most interesting thing that I pulled from this is Jorah said that he should enjoy it and his children after him. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because it's changed my whole perspective on Longclaw. I always thought of it as Jon Snow's sword. I never thought of it as a family sword, an ancestral sword. A sword that could be passed down to Jon Snow's kids. So just the whole introduction to this idea that this could be the start of a new lineage, a new family sword. House Snow, House Targaryen, or House Stark, or a combination of them all. But I think this could be a seed that's planted to the start of a new house, a new family, and a new sword that's passed down to every one of them. And it starts with Jon Snow. And that raises many questions like, what family name will Jon stick with? Jon has always felt like he's a Stark, but what happens when he's proven to be a legitimized Targaryen? This is hinted with Sam in Old Town, when Gilly says that Prince Rhaegar married privately in Dorne, and it's heavily hinted that he married Lyanna Stark, and this would legitimize Jon to be the next heir to the Iron Throne. So will he stick with his Stark name, go with his new legitimized Targaryen name, or stay with being a Snow? Because Jon has always gone by Snow. So he could either fall into one name, or maybe he could create his own family house. But moving on in Dragonstone, Tyrion discusses with Daenerys how the line of succession is going to continue because she is barren. She cannot have any children. And I find it really interesting that they brought this back, the fact that she is barren, because she can't have her own children. It automatically changes how the line of succession will work. And it's only natural that Tyrion worries about what will happen next after her death. But what I really love about this scene is that it hints at a totally different ending than we were expecting. This show may end with a democratic republic society, where people elect their own leaders based on a voting pool. And Tyrion hints at this, that the Night's Watch have a certain way to elect a leader, as well as the Ironborn. The people choose the leader that is right for them. So I think overall Tyrion is really looking for another way to keep the wheel broken while Daenerys is gone. And I find it very ironic how Tyrion wants to build this world that's based off voting and power to the people, whereas Daenerys is coming in forcing her power onto the people. And there are a couple contradictions and interesting connections that I find here. First of all, Jon Snow is one of the only characters that has started from nothing. He started off as a bastard, but every position of power he has gotten, he has earned, and people have voted for him. At the Night's Watch, the people voted for him. As King of the North, the people chose him. Even though he was a bastard and he shouldn't have any titles to any lands, but people voted for him anyway. But then there's the other side of the coin where we see Sam and Gilly discovering Prince Rhaegar marrying another woman in silence, which would legitimize Jon Snow. So are they setting up that Jon is the perfect candidate, the person that the people will vote for, as well as the person with the perfect name? It seems like Varys was talking to Tyrion about this in Season 5. Talking about the perfect person that they can back. And right now Varys is having a lot of concerns about Daenerys as a ruler. And he's trying to get Tyrion to make her listen. But it seems like Varys may discover that the ruler that he wants to back is actually a bastard named Jon Snow. The people have always backed Jon. He always makes the right decision. And on top of that, he has a Targaryen name. So I think that's a plot point that could potentially be touched on later in the show. And we get further hints about Jon Snow's parentage with Beric Dondarrion. He says that Jon looked nothing like Ned Stark and he must take more from the mother. That's a natural shade that Ned Stark actually isn't Jon's father. And the conversation that these two have is actually very touching. I loved how they kept going on about how death is the enemy and they were trying to find their purpose. Why were they brought back? And I love how they come to the conclusion that they're there to help people. help people who cannot help themselves, and constantly fight death in spite of it always winning. Just fight for the living. And I love how Jon came to the conclusion that he is the shield that guards the realms of men, and I think here his story comes full circle. He's obviously a very important character, and he's very honorable to a T, but I think here Jon discovers what his true purpose is. To just be himself. Protect the people who can't protect themselves. And I think Jon will continue on doing that in this series. But they get interrupted because the Hound sees a mountain shaped like an arrowhead. And he says that they're getting very close. And this is actually a very important mountain. Besides the fact that the Hound actually saw it in the flames, this mountain was seen before, in a vision with Bran. The arrowhead is actually very close to where the Night King was created. So we will see if it'll touch on any more of this going forward, but I think this hints at a strong White Walker culture. I find it funny how the mountain is called looking like an arrowhead, where the Night King was right there and witnessed the mountain. He witnessed the spiral that surrounded him when he got the dragon glass plunged into his heart. And he uses all of these symbols. He decorates the spiral symbols with the dead that he kills. He wears an arrowhead on his torso that could potentially symbolize the mountain. His followers, the White Walkers that he's converted, Craster's babies, wear the same symbol of an arrowhead. And they have a deeply connected culture. They usually travel in packs of 4. They use these symbols from their past, as well as the support of this arrow symbol. There was no clear motive in this episode, but I believe we could see a potential motive of the Night King going forward. He's not just a weapon of mass destruction. He's a character who has a motive, who has something that he wants to pursue. And I think in this episode we can cherry pick and see what his motive is and what his abilities are. They did use the crutch of the water, keeping the wights from attacking Jon and his crew, but I think there could be another way to explain it. What if the Night King wanted them there so he can drag Daenerys north of the wall to take one of their dragons? He had a new weapon, almost like an ice javelin that we haven't seen before. Like he knew that they were coming, and it seemed like he had just enough to kill the 3 dragons. And I would love if this is true, because this hints at the Night King's ability to green sea and warg. I would love it if they played it off that the Night King knew that Daenerys had dragons, and for this reason he held Jon up in the middle of that lake. And I would love if they showed that he was always connected to the Weirwood Tree. The reason why in Season 6 that you see the Weirwood Tree destroyed and surrounded in ice is because the Night King has taken it over. As long as the Night King is touching ice, he is connected to the Weirwood Trees that he has destroyed. And this explains many things. This is the reason why he could see Bran. When Bran is walking in his vision, he could see him because he's also connected to the philosophical aspects of life. The reason why he could see Bran warging into those crows is because he's connected to Bran on a deeper level. The level that Bran can only see. And it would explain why the Night King is waiting north of the wall. He's waiting for the perfect time. And now it seems like a perfect time because he has a mount. He has a dragon of his own. So I think we can see a lot more attacks of the Night King going forward. But regarding the Night King, we found out one more weakness. And that's that all the wights die when you kill the White Walker or the Night King who resurrected them. We see that in the first fight scene when Jon kills the White Walker and all of the wights fall. And I think that this is another hint of the Night King being able to warg. I personally have always said that what we're seeing is actually a different form of warging. The reason why the wights' eyes turn blue is because the Night King is seeing through them and controlling them. But there obviously is arguments against that. And I want to touch on the intelligence of wights. The Hound ends up chucking a rock and smoking one of these motherfuckers in the face, taking out its jaw. And then the Hound throws a second rock, but this wight realizes that the ice is frozen, so he starts crossing. It seemed like all of the wights knew that they weren't allowed to cross the water. And then they knew that they could cross the ice because it was frozen. Almost like they have a certain level of code or knowledge that they can use in attacks. The only question is how much. And I want to point out that that one wight that the Hound smoked in the face was a huge pain in the ass in that whole fight scene. The Hound had to knock him to the side, knock him underwater, and then he came back up. And then the fucker came back up and grabbed Tormund and almost killed him. So that was a tough son of a bitch, and the Hound picked the wrong wight to mess with. But then after the Night King kills Viserion, Jon tries to escape but gets thrown in the water. And you could say that this is, really quick writing to try and play off the drama and make it more intense. But I think it explains something that Beric was talking about earlier. Beric and Darren was saying that they were back for a reason. Why don't they just go for it and kill the Night King? They wouldn't die by just freezing in the cold. Because the fact that they were resurrected means that they need to die for a purpose. And I think Jon being dragged underwater here and seeing him get up explains that he's a lot more than just a human now. He's somebody who has to fulfill a particular prophecy, and he cannot die until that happens. And I think it opens a lot of other tinfoil questions that I don't think are necessarily true. He is technically a fire wight, and we don't know what his abilities are. He may be superhuman in a certain sense, being able to survive the cold a little bit more than other people, than living people. And because of this, he was able to drag himself out just in time for Benjen to come save him. And I believe that Benjen could have come or knew that Jon was in need of saving because of Bran Stark. But then at the end of this whole fight, Jon has a scene with Daenerys, and we see them kind of share a romantic scene. She ends up telling Jon that she is barren, that the dragons are her only children, and then she reemphasizes, "Do you understand?" And I feel like this scene is really rooted in the fact that she is telling Jon that she cannot have children. And the fact that that's really hard for her. And the feelings that she may feel for Jon are almost irrelevant because a marriage wouldn't result in children to succeed her. So it seems like the two characters, regardless of how they feel for each other, a marriage could be good strategically, but they could not pass down anything to their children because they could not have children. But lastly, we get Winterfell. And here we get a lot of drama between Sansa, Littlefinger, and Arya, and I'm actually not sure how they're going to handle this. I don't know who's manipulating who. Because in one scene we see Sansa talking to Littlefinger about Arya in the letter, and it seems like here that she somewhat trusts him, which I find that really contradicts how she's been handling Littlefinger before. She's always been shutting him down. And I feel like here she's giving him an ear. And I feel like here she's really talking to him, seeking advice, almost like she is trying to goat him into doing something or admitting something. And in this interaction, I think Littlefinger shows his motives without really showing his motives. Littlefinger states that Arya would never betray her family, which I believe that Littlefinger thinks that she would betray her family. He's just trying to make Sansa believe otherwise. And because he said that, he got information from Sansa. Sansa stated that she would most definitely betray her if she thought that Sansa was betraying Jon. And that's a piece of information that Littlefinger now knows that he didn't know before. So Littlefinger suggests that Brienne can help. She can protect both of them because she's sworn an oath to protect both the Stark girls. And I'm not sure why he gave her that advice, but I find it most interesting that Sansa sends Brienne away to King's Landing, and she was very strong on it. She shut Brienne up and sent her regardless, almost like she has a hidden motive. But my only question is why? She doesn't want Brienne there to separate them, to keep them safe from each other? Does she not want Brienne there because she wants to sneak to Arya's corridors and find that letter that incriminates her? Because here is where we see an interaction between the sisters, and it seems very hostile. And Sansa seems genuinely scared. But at the end of it, Arya ends up giving her cat's paw and walks away. Almost like she was telling Sansa that everything is okay. This whole thing is an act. So I'm very curious to see how this is going forward. Is Arya fooling Littlefinger? Is Sansa fooling Littlefinger? Or is Littlefinger fooling both of them? I feel like right now I'm very confused and it can only be answered in the next episode. But please let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you agree with my analysis? What else did you pull from it that I might have not? And I just want to say again, the breakdown that I recorded with Trev will be coming out a couple days after this video. Be patient with me, I'm very negative on it because I recorded it a couple of days after the episode. I was still very frustrated, but now I had a chance to record this episode and I've had a lot of time to really think it through and cool it off in my head and come to terms about what this episode is. So I want to thank all of you people down in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for the support. But until next time, I'll see you guys later.